is another weekend back here in the warehouse. I've fully cleaned this area up after the mess we made pulling this out, and it is finally time to begin stripping this thing and actually see what the damage is. I'm gonna start off by just taking everything on the outside off, I guess, like belts, alternator, probably try and sort this intake manifold and injectors and stuff, because I want to just have the long block still assembled so that I can give it a real nice clean, as I think now, while it's all still together with all old parts, is the best opportunity. Get rid of some of this and have the motor looking fresh again. You can see it's caked up a lot of oil and grease over the years, so I would love to get rid of that. But yeah, anyway, let's start stripping the exterior of this block. Alrighty guys, here we are. A lot of progress made. Intake manifold off, exhaust manifold, turbo off, with bags labelled with their hardware. Got all the front pulleys, power steering, AC, all with labelled bags of hardware. Belts labelled, although I might change them out. But yeah, here she is, pretty bare now. Might even leave this on to clean it, but that's this piece with the water neck is pretty much all that's left. One engine mount bracket, and that's it. For a 19-year-old motor, I'm pretty happy with how that came out. Seen a lot of people paint their blocks and the head, but not sure how I really feel about doing that. I feel like over time it's just really not going to look that good. I feel like the paint will start to deteriorate with all the heat. But this is fairly clean. I didn't go hard on the oil pump front cover or the water pump because I got new ones of them already, so they'll be going in the bin. And that's pretty much most of what you'll see anyway. That's the front of the engine, so that'll all be brand new. As I said, it did come out pretty good anyway, but there'll be a new manifold right there, so you won't barely even see that side of the motor. And obviously intake manifold on this side, which I might try and get the intake manifold properly bead blasted or something like that, just so that looks fresh to match the rest of the fresh stuff on the top of the engine. Anyway, we are now onto the real fun stuff. I'm gonna rip this rocker cover off and start disassembling the head so we can disassemble the bottom end, which is where I believe we'll find our damage. I'm honestly quite excited to get into this because, as I've said already, I have no prior mechanical knowledge and engines have always interested me. So I think it'll be super cool to be able to completely strip it, learn in detail everything that goes on inside, and I'm sure pulling it apart will help me a lot with knowing how to assemble it properly. Okay, so David here helping me out. I'm not going to show you undoing every single bolt because that would be boring, but we will show you what we're doing. So we're going to start off by loosening the cams, these two front cam bolts. This little cover's got to come off as well to access this bolt, because you want to do that while the timing chain tension, or the timing chain is all connected and there's tension, so that you can actually undo the bolts. Okay, so first we're going to remove the cam angle sensor. So it's just 2 bolts on the side. And this should pull out. Like that. Now on the left side, the timing chain tensioner, which I won't be reusing. Okay, so we're taking like the cam caps and the oil squirters off now. I'll show you the order once we've got everything out, but you want to make sure you keep these in order because you don't want to be mixing these up. Even the bolts, I'm going to keep them in order just in case. So it's easy, just these bolts along the top, and then the cam should be able to pop out. Now we want to pull the rockers off. That's how they're attached. Just to the back of the lifter, pull straight off and straight over here into our order. Keeping everything in the same order that we pulled it out. Okay, so now really important is pulling the shims out. You probably want a magnetic puller so you're not dropping it somewhere in the engine. And these you 100% have to make sure you're keeping in the same order, because I believe some of them are slightly different in height, and if you put them back in the wrong order you'll have a lot of issues of spitting rockers. So just, there we go, and straight over here into our order. Now we're pulling lifters, 4 on each side. Just want to grab some pliers. Just straight out like that. We're now on to taking the head off. So other than the head studs, there's these 2 little bolts which kind of cross each other there. And there's 2 just in the top here that hold the head to the front timing cover. Sorry if you're noticing the time changes. Doing this over a few days, I needed to grab a breaker bar because these head bolts are quite tight. But now I'll give them a go. There's 10 of them and they should pull out easily with this. So this breaker bar I bought turns out to be a piece of crap. I don't actually know if it's a breaker bar because it seems to have an extra swivel. So it doesn't quite work. So I've found this metal pole, putting it on the end of my ratchet, and this is how it's got to be done. These things are crazy tight. Oh, this doesn't feel right. And if you're wondering why I'm doing this pattern, you're supposed to work your way outside in. I don't know if it matters too much when you're undoing them, but I know 100% when you're doing them up, you want to work your way outside in. And it's pretty much the same with tightening up anything on an engine, just to make sure it is sitting evenly and there's not too much stress on one side at one time. Now I'm pretty sure when I pull this off, it's gonna drop oil everywhere because it's still a bit of a mess in there. So I'm gonna chuck a towel down and hopefully this lifts straight off. These 2 little guards, one there and one there on the other side of the block, are super important. They align the head to sit perfect on there, so you want to pull them out and keep them somewhere safe. Okay, it is pretty much bottom end time now. I just got to rip the front cover / oil pump off and the water pump, just these bolts on the front, and the different timing chain guides. So I'll just organize them so I know how to put them back together, flip the motor upside down, and we'll start pulling the pans off. Okay, so here is the old water pump out, but I didn't realize the front cover is connected with 2 bolts, I think, from the underneath, which you actually need the oil pans off to get to. So let's begin with taking the lower pan off.
I say so myself.
How's that?
This afternoon, walked into a fruit store. The clerk thought I was some out-of-town hick. Those apples will be $2 each, he tells me. That's why I outsmarted him.
16.
And over a 5.
Might be hard for you guys to see, but fair bit of glitter in there, so I'm pretty sure these bearings are not going to look good. Now we take this plate thing, honestly not too sure what it's called, and then we get access to remove the oil pickup, and then I believe the whole upper pan should be ready to come off. The pickup doesn't actually interfere with the upper pan, and looks like it would be easier to take off when the pan is off. So I'm going to try pull that off first. Now the cool thing about this that the beautiful Japanese engineers did is they put 2 extra threads on this upper pan that lead to just solid metal of the block. So what you do is you grab one of your bolts from your bell housing, put that in there and tighten it, and that will push against the block and force the pan up without having to try and wedge it off with a screwdriver or something like I had to do with the lower pan. Okay, so we now literally only have the girdle, pistons, rods, and obviously bearings left in the engine. Everything else is stripped. So we are now onto the fun part. I'll spin the engine so that we can have access to the rod end caps, undo them, and start pulling these pistons out. Surprisingly not crazy tight. Not that I know how tight things are supposed to be. Now, like everything else, I'm going to be putting this in order on the table so nothing gets mixed up. I'll have a closer look at these later on, but straight away, the sides of this piston, just I guess all the oil does just has metal flakes in it. Like I can actually feel them, so that is not ideal. Okay, so guys, I'm running low on battery, so I'm gonna make this quick, but all the pistons are out, so now the girdle is to come off. 10 bolts, then we'll pull the main caps off, and then the very last piece, the crank should pull out. Leaving all the bolts in there to stop confusion. And here we are, the very final piece of the disassembly. Crank is coming out. Okay, finally I can say that the SR20 is completely disassembled. We have the bare block here. I honestly don't know what I'm looking at, but I think the block is good. Bearings, on the other hand, are a different story. So the bearings that were on the rod end caps, number one, you can see there's a little bit of scoring, and I can feel that with my finger. And I thought that was probably bad and the cause of everything. But then you come and look at number three, and look at that, that is destroyed. So a lot of metal shavings would have come off that, and that's probably enough to cause a knocking sound, which I heard. Then moving on to the crank bearings, the ones that were between the crank and the bottom of the block looked pretty good, but the ones that were between the crank and the girdle were not great. You can see there's little signs of scoring on most of them, and I'm not too sure how much damage that can really cause. So yes, it sucks, but definitely relieved that it was what I suspected and I didn't pull the motor apart for no reason. Now it's time for me to drop this off at a machine shop so they can check that everything's good. Hopefully the crank is good, and just resurface some things, get it all ready to put back together. But yeah, that's a big part of the process complete, and it was definitely a cool learning experience. Still so much left to do, not only with the engine, but with the car. I've got some plans to make this quite pretty in here. So it's going to take a while, but it'll all be worth it in the end. If you're interested to see what else I'm getting up to complete this, please subscribe, follow along. But yeah, that's about all. Thanks for watching.